and welcome back to Big Girl Hunters. Join me here on the beautiful banks of the Roach pit. I booked all next week off. I've got a few nights ahead of me, try and do as much fishing as possible, and hopefully I could get on some fish and catch a couple more of these absolute south coast bangers. I haven't been able to get down for the last couple of weeks, but before that I was on a really good run. I had a good 2-3 weeks of really good form, and I'm obviously going to show you that. I filmed certain parts of it, so you'll see that all cropped together, and hopefully during this session I can talk you through what happened, the highlights, the lows, and obviously the captures and things like that, because I did actually have a few. It's actually been a really good start. Best spring I've had for a while. So where to start? I guess it's probably best to start off my first session of the year on the opening. I'm trying to think of when that actually was now. Whenever the angling trust or government let us go angling, or whoever it was, did the first night, got in a draw, ended up going into swim 5 into the channel where I had been tricking a little bit of bait a few weeks before then into that area. Unfortunately nothing happened. It was only a quick overnighter, then I had to kind of get off, and then it ended up doing a week over at Limbrook, which I've already put that video out. I had that really nice 31 pounds half lin or whatever it's called, really nice dark fish. So good start to the spring, but it was like, let's get over it and do some proper fishing. It's now the 23rd of May. If we take it back exactly, rewind exactly a month, on the 23rd of April, I was just getting down. I had 2 to 3 nights ahead of me to kind of get down here and do some fishing. I got down here pretty early, about 4 o'clock, and I parked down the bottom car park, ended up walking around, spent about 20 minutes, half an hour down the bottom end, was looking, didn't see much, saw a couple of tench rolling. There was a few bivvies down there. I had it in my head in the drive that they were going to be in this area we call the lawns. It's sort of an area you can see right down the bottom of the lake. You can see all of it, and I just had it in my head because we had a little bit of sun that they were just going to be there, and just when I got there and just showing, there was someone actually fishing there. I think my mate Luke was fishing there that morning, so I decided to carry on walking. Got round the lake, spent a little bit of time in the channel having a look around there. Nothing. Carried on going. I sort of got round this swim called Caravan, and I was sort of looking out through the trees, and I saw some big fish come out. I was like, oh, what's that? So I carried on sort of running round, and then got round to a swim called Webley's, and another one showed right in the edge, probably 2-3 rod lengths out, real close in. Shows, and then another one, and then another one, probably 5-6 shows at this point. So I'm sort of freaking out. So I'm like, right, I bomb it down, sort of quickly walk, half jog, half quickly walk, because I was absolutely gassed by the time I got halfway round there. So I got in my car, drove all the way down to the other end, obviously undid the gate, locked the gate back up, got out. I grabbed, I think, just 2 rods, unhooking mat, a few bits and bobs, a bit of bait, got it all in my unhooking mat, and sort of sprinted all the way down to Webley's. I was standing in there, again, a couple more fish showed, so I chucked a couple of just naked chods over the showers. I was there for about 20 minutes and it just gone quiet. I looked round to the left and I saw they were showing, again, very close into a swim they called 33, which is right in this little snaggy corner, and they do spend a lot of time right in that snag. Seems once it gets kind of spring, all the way through the year, there's always 1 or 2 in this, what we call a 33 snag. So reeled in, got back round to this swim, which is a little bit further, I don't know how many meters further down, but it's further down into the lake. Again, watched them for a little bit, another couple shows. They were showing a little bit further out now, only probably about 20 yards or whatever, but much closer in than right in the edge like they were in Webley's. And then casted them back out again. And I stayed in that swim for probably about 40 minutes, and again it just sort of died off. And then I saw them showing even further on. So if I'm looking at that way, it would be further on to my left, in front of a swim called 35. I hadn't fished a swim for a long time. It's quite deep. I quickly got my wheelbarrow, got the gear on, and made it down to 35. By this point, they were showing again, and they were still showing out there. Again, sort of some close in, some sort of mid-range. So I just watched. I was watching. 1 rod out, 2nd rod out, and just as I was about to put my 3rd rod out, sort of going on towards the island, some massive fish came out, and I didn't move so much water. I just sort of saw the end of the bosh and just the water that it splashed, and it was like I was in a swimming pool with a bucket just going, and I was like, cool, that's a good one. So I didn't know what that spot was like. I haven't fished down in that swim for ages, so like I say, naked trod bead quite far back just in case it's Canadian or silty or whatever. Silkweed, there's a lot of silkweed out in this lake at the minute, a lot of eelgrass, all sorts of stuff. So I just put it out there, and where I ended up dropping right on that fish, well actually I put it past that fish, reeled it to sort of where the fish sort of showed along the surface and let it drop, and it was just dropping and dropping and dropping. It was probably one of its deepest spots in the lake, so I was like, oh, that's not really the one. Zigs are banned on this particular lake. I was like, I'm on them, but I reckon they're mid-water, and I was like, God knows, 10, 12 foot away from them, plus even, you know, especially if they're sort of swimming up towards. So, and again, a couple more shows, and it just, an hour or so, it just died off. By this point, it got to about 8:30, 9ish, I think. I was just lying there on my bed, and the sun had come out because it was really, really bright, starting to warm up. What rod was it? Middle rod? No, left-hand rod just absolutely melted off. Churned off one toner and bent straight into it, and thought, cool, this was a good fish. It was just plodding, bending my rod right round, plodding up and down, up and down, up and down. It just took forever to come in. I remember saying to the boys, it took me around 40 minutes. I remember looking at the time, and then once I got it in the net, I was shaking, and I looked at my phone, and it was like, what? That took like over 40 minutes. But this fish, at first it started stripping line a little bit from me, but it was just using its weight, and it was just plodding side to side to side. I could tell it was a good one. It stayed pretty deep right until the end, and it sort of popped up, and I got it in the net. I actually misscooped the first time. I was like, oh no. Saw how, when it popped to the side, saw how bloody big it was, and then got it in the net, and I was absolutely buzzing. I was shaking. I was like, oh my God. I thought it was a fish that we call the big simo. Some of the members call it the big dick, because it's got these kind of scales on the side. They look like ball bag, and then not along, and then scales across it like a shaft, to call it the big dick. But I think the original name of it is called the big simo. Anyway, I thought it was that fish, which is, you know, a known 40-pounder. So I quickly unhooked it in the net, sort of got it secured, and then phoned my mate Luke, who was fishing further down, and phoned him and said, like, mate, I've got big dick, I've got the simo, the big dick. And he goes, nah. And then he was like, right, I'm going to come round. By this point, I'd got it right in the retainer, just sort of resting, because it was a long old battle, making sure it was sort of led up and right in some deep water. It's quite nice because on this particular swim, you'll see there's a nice kind of platoon that goes out, and you can sort of get them right in some nice deeper water, away from any sort of snags or anything like that when they're in the retainer. And he came down and had a look at it, and I went, yeah, it looks big. He goes, how big? I go, 35 plus, like 37 plus, like it's a good one. You know, wasn't sure it was a 40 at that point. In my head, I thought that looks like a good 40, but I wasn't 100% sure. I've caught quite a few 39s. I just had that 40-pound curse in my head. Thought, oh, it's going to be 39 pound. You know, Luke came down, looked in the retainer, saw the big scales on its shoulders, and went, mate, that's big it is. I was like, what? Who's big it? Like, what's big it is? I can't even remember that fish. He goes, no, that's big it. It ain't been out for like 2.5 years. I was like, no. He goes, yeah, that's big it is. Not. He goes, mate, I'm 100% sure that's big it is. And then he looked at the side. He goes, mate, that looks massive. So then me and Luke got it up. We weighed it, and it went 46. Right, there we go. New PB. Big ears, 46.3. Luke and Ollie and Rob come down to help me. It's escaped catcher for a couple of years, so I'm absolutely buzzing with this. See if we can lift it up for you. It's a bit of a back burner, this one. I'm weak these days. Ooh, there we go. Ooh. I think it's time for the bucket. Hey.
I think that's a double bucket.
Great. Do you reckon she's ready to go?
Yeah.
Go on then, me old. And it just shows you, if you get on them early, get that on them, you can catch them. We had a big old social that night. Got the big old fire pit going. Got a few beers on. We had a bit of drum and bass going on. Dan, the party man here around here, one of the bailiffs, he had a good old fire going, so we all sort of had a bit of a social that night. Obviously, I was pretty buzzing. New PB, true proper spring buzz. Unfortunately, the rest of the session just kind of drifted away. There you go, give it a little kiss, mate. Nice.
First one from the old Roach pit. Lovely.
Roach pit buzz. I've essentially used 3 rigs this whole spring. I've used a solid bad rig, which I've showed on here many times, this stiff hinge rig, or a naked choddy, and essentially all that is that part, but without this boom. Very popular rig, it's been around for a long time, it's caught a lot of fish. But I thought it'd be worth sort of mentioning a couple of the bits that I do. I think there's little bits and bobs that you can do in these rigs to make all the difference. As they say, it's all about percentages, so every single little thing has a purpose and is there for a reason. So the boom itself is made of 20 pounds fluorocarbon. It's nice and stiff, but it's still got a bit of flexibility, and obviously it's gene clear. It just goes invisible in the water. This particular water is very clear, so anything like that is just an advantage. I don't think it makes a huge difference, obviously, because I've got that bit of putty as well, which helps just push that bit away. So a bit I wanted to focus on is this loop here. It's a big loop. This gives, as you can see, the rig lots of movement. And then moving down to the chod section itself, see I've got this, I think that's a size 11. It's not a ring swivel, it's just a tiny swivel, a size 11 swivel. And I put that onto this 25 pound chod material. I've got a bit of a curve in there, not too aggressive. It's a size 6, very sharp hook. A little bit of putty to help balance it down. And what you want with this, you want it to just be balanced right down perfectly. And the hook bait there is an S-Core 3, the Arctic crab. Smells absolutely divine. The differences of why I would use the stiff hinge or the naked chod is it's quite simple. If I already know the spots, I know that it's a bit weedy or a bit silty, I know I've got going to get a good drop, then I always use this. I think you get better hook holds, better presentation in general. Bit where the naked chod comes in is if I'm chasing fish early spring and I don't know what the bottom's like, I haven't had time to lead about and there's fish there showing, I just want to get a hook bait on them, I'll push the bead right back and just cast the chod section, this bit, on a naked running chod. Great presentation for springtime, get on it, catch some whackers. A week or so later I had a guestie booked with my mate, another water on the south coast. Absolutely love this lake, full of big uns as well. We'd had like 6 weeks of like easterlies, you know, very cold, lots of frosts, and he'd done 1 or 2 nights already before, and I was meeting him, I met him quite early, and when I got there it was foggy and the whole lake was frosted up, and I was like, oh. About 10 o'clock, this big old proper big storm, it was up to 65 mile per hour winds, like proper big southwesterly, first big pressure drop, rain, everything. We were both talking about it and we were like, should we do it? Yeah, fuck it, let's do it. Let's get on the end of this wind. I actually left it a little bit late because by the time I was getting my solid bags out, the wind had already started to pick up, so it was pretty tricky. I think I was fishing 15 wraps or something like that, I can't remember. Nice, clear, sort of silty area, a little bit firmer to the left. 3 bags out there. Actually saw a couple clatter out, so it was like bang on. Had the bags out and obviously the wind and then the rain hit in and it was really savage, real windy. But come, I think it was about 10 o'clock, it was so windy, I had my Delkim's sensitivity as low as they possibly could, and he was getting the odd beep beep every now and then, beep beep, and then the wind, this big gust came through and I got a beep beep, but this time it just carried on going beep and it was just churning one toner. So I ran up with my head torch on and Chris saw me. I was like, Chris, I'm in, and he came down, and that the 5 minute battle, we saw his side profile on his belly and we're like, oh, that's getting bigger. And then when we got it up, yeah, it was 30 pounds, a nice dint and mirror. So that was the right buzz. Got the rods back out again in the wind, or the rod back out in the wind. And then I'm trying to think of what time it was, just before light, or it was just getting light. And again, the same rod absolutely churned off, and this one was a real big battle. And it picked up my other line as well, so that didn't help, and it was just beating me up, and I was like, oh, this could be a good one. Finally got it under the net. Chris was still asleep. Sunrise was just coming up, and yeah, got it in the net, and it was this beautiful scaly fish, like real long, like real nice long fish. I was like, that's a good 30 pounder, but it was absolutely stunning. So I banged it in the retainer whilst I put the kettle on. Absolute belter this one. Wait till you see the other side. The old S-Core and 2E combo in a solid bag, doing it again. 34 pounds. South Coast scaly. No. Oh god, this side is unbelievable. There she is. Thing of beauty. Oh. No, once we'd all settled and I got Chris up, we weighed the fish together. It was 35 pounds, beautiful scaly fish. I got told by one of the members it's one of the rare ones. So doesn't have a name or anything like that, just a really nice mid-30 long scaly beast. Came back, and then I headed back to Roach Pit that weekend. Got there, very, very busy. My mate Ollie was fishing in 35 where I caught big ears from, and again the wind had died off for a few days, but we were getting another big lower pressure, lots of rain, big southwesterlies, and I fancied getting on the end of this wind again. I waited a few hours for him to get off, and I jumped in up behind him. Not much bait, a couple of spoms, all carp particles, snail and hemp, bit of maize, a couple of boilies, not a huge amount of bait. Nothing happened that first morning. I was feeling a little bit despondent. Spurs were playing, sort of midday. I think it was like 12 o'clock kickoff. We were playing. Who were we playing? Leeds. I was just sitting there watching it, and Spurs were 1-0 down, and then Son scored. Literally, the goal hit the net, and then my middle rod it was my right hand rod actually, just melted off. Like as it was like, blah, just churned off, proper one toner. Bent into it, and this fish just started bent straight round and started stripping line off me at like 50 yards, 60 yards. It was just going. I was like, oh my God. And then it weeded me up solid. And by this point, the storm had proper kicked in. It was like real heavy, again, winds. And where I was, I'm right in the teeth of it. So I had to jump in the boat. And because the wind was pushing the boat backwards, it took me about 10 minutes to literally reel up to near to where the fish was. Obviously, you get above them, and then luckily if you change the angle. By that point, I'd felt no kicking the whole time I was in that boat, probably because of the wind. So I was like, oh, this fish is off. But as I got about 2 meters just sort of near to the fish, where the fish was weeded up, the fish was like, nah, I'm not having it, fuck this. And it just started tearing off and like towing me around. And then once it sort of knackered itself out a bit, the wind got up so bad that it was pulling me and the fish right into this snaggy corner, and I started to panic because I'm chasing this fish called a saddleback, big, dark mirror that could be near 50 pounds, very, very big, very, very nice fish. And very early on in the fight, this fish came up and rolled, and I saw its shoulders, sort of its head and then shoulders. And I thought it was saddleback. I was like, I cannot believe it, I've got saddleback on. So I started to panic, and I was like, oh. Anyway, I was fighting this fish. I was actually, by this point, I was shouting help for Dwayne, who was fishing in this swim here. I was shouting over to my mate Scales and Luke. I was going, help, because this wind was pushing me back, so me and the fish, so bad. It was actually gonna push me back into these snags with the boat. And I had it in my head, oh my God, this fish is gonna get in the snag. So I actually ended up in the snags with my back in the trees, and this fish just sort of plodding around. And just because on my landing net has a split in the handle, you can take it off, and it's actually easier to land fish in the boat that way. Luke was there by this point, and he was sort of like, stay calm. And I was going, no, saddleback, mate. Oh, it's going to get in the snag. But it was just sort of going up and down in front of the boat, and all it needed to do was go around to the right, and it would have been in some of the underneath these trees, and God knows what snags are under there. But I managed to sort of control it, and I was panicking a little bit because this battle had been going on for ages at this point. And then the fish came up, and he went, mate, don't worry, it's not saddleback, it's the grey one. Obviously, the grey one is one of the oldest fish. Well, it's probably the oldest fish in Ringwood. 45 years plus, could be getting up towards 50 years old. Big, sort of upper 30. So, didn't really stop me panicking. But I was like, all right, I haven't got a saddleback on. Just calm down. And I managed to get the net under, but I couldn't get it in the net because the way that it was in the wind, I couldn't get it in. So what I had to do is sort of pull the rod back, drop my rod in the water, and just stab at it and just get it in with this little smaller shortened down handle piece. I got it in the net, and Luke was next to me. He was sort of in the snags and in his waders. He was like, yes, and I was going, come on. It was just such one of the most intense, stressful moments I've ever had in fishing. It just really was. I mean, when you're attached to an older Roach Pit original, certainly one of the bigger ones as well, it really sort of got the heart going. And it's one of the ones I dearly wanted to catch because it's a gnarly old slate grey beast of a carp. Get that secured over, back to the original swim. I had to leave the boat in that corner because the wind was so bad. I couldn't paddle it out, I couldn't fight the wind, so that had to stay there for a bit. Then dealt with the fish, got it up. It was 37.14. Very, very nice fish. It'd been caught once already this year, so it's come out twice. I'm sure it might come out again. It's in recent years, it used to be one of the real hard ones to catch, but in recent years it does come out a few more times, so getting a little bit friendlier, but I don't care because it's an absolute banger of a fish and one of the ones that most members really want to catch. Once everything sort of settled down, the big carp buzz from the grey one sort of settled down a little bit. Rods were out perfect. Next morning came around, again very quiet. Almost at the same time, near 1 o'clock, my rod ripped off again. I bent into it. I was like, what is this? This feels heavy. This time it was just again very plodding, using its weight. It wasn't tearing off like the grey one. Got it in. It was only about 15 minutes, so not a short fight, but still. And then I just saw it come up on the surface, big mirror. I was like, oh God, what is that? That's massive. And then it rolled and I saw the big scales on its shoulders. I was like, no, it cannot be. Rolled again and I definitely saw on the other side, the two bigger ones, and it was big ears again. I could not believe it. Dwayne and Squires came round to help me weigh it again, and we got it spot on. But it was 46.8, which is a few ounces heavier. Managed to take a few photos of each side, bit of footage, and get it back, and I couldn't believe it. I actually felt, it was weird, it was a weird one, because I was obviously buzzing because I'd just caught a 46 pounder, but I was also like really gutted because any fish, even some of the real small stockies, to me, is a prize for this lake. But the fact that I caught it again, it was 2 weeks down the line, same swim, totally different spot, different hook bait. I caught that on a trimmed down S-Core wafter, where before I caught it on an S-Core pop-up. So obviously likes the S-Core. Strange obviously likes that area, so anyone that's sort of targeting that fish in the future, and I do believe when it came out in 2018 it was from that same swim, so it seems to obviously live in that area. If you want the big ears buzz, get in that swim, catch it. It's weird, and I felt a bit gutted because I know a lot of the other members would die to catch that fish. They would love to catch it, and I caught it twice. I just felt a bit greedy, but can't complain. And then that was it, rod back out, but nothing else happened. And since then, I haven't been down back at the lake for ages. I was sort of walking it on my lunch breaks quite a bit and all that sort of stuff, but with work being so busy, I've got so much recruitment going on at Lush at the moment, I just haven't been able to get down. So I feel I was really in tune that whole kind of 2-3 week period, or 4 week period. I was really in tune with the lake. I sort of knew what the fish, where they were, where they would be in certain weather conditions, when to get on them and all the rest of it. But I feel a little bit out of tune of things now, and hopefully I can continue that good form and catch another banger. Hopefully I can get that saddle back. It won't be too long. Fingers crossed.